All right, I made it back, Jill. Julie? Hey, Jill, you still with me or what?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh. You just disappeared on me, girl. I hope you're not getting sick on me.
Oh, no, I'm okay.
All right. You know, you and I, we are best of buds. You know that one.
Yes. It's good that you look up to me always, because some people, you never know who you embrace and how it is. But regardless, I always have to make change. It's not like I'm after
Hey.
people. I'm just trying to make a difference for the DD Council and do what I do in the state of Louisiana.
Shoot. Hey, you inspire me. You know that.
Oh, girl.
Hey, it's for the things I do. Just makes me think of you.
Wow.
You know, you have to really stand up for what you really believe in, and you got me to start doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm always on this council, and here I am doing what I have to do best, you know? Hey, what time you have, Joe?
1 o'clock.
Mm. Well, slowly but surely, everybody's coming on. What's up, Steven?
Oh, Stephen, yeah, no win. He's a very nice guy. Oh, but
Yeah,
I
I
have to
know.
go through an orientation in the new year because I got reappointed in a second. Yeah. I don't know when that and the retreat's going to be in 2021.
Shoot, God only knows, girlfriend. God only knows. What are you up to, Steve?
Rosalind, did you do your early voting yet, girl? Are you going to wait till the 3rd of next month?
No, I need to.
Well, you already did it. Yeah.
Shoot, I need to do it. Hey, Steve, did you vote yet?
No, I need to do that this week.
You could. Hey, Steven, how's your mom, how's Miss Nguyen doing?
She's doing well. Thanks for asking.
Do you still serve on the silk, or are you just doing the DD Council for now?
I'm still there.
How's everybody? Good?
Yeah, he does the LAKN too.
We're good.
I did my
Hey,
service, Steve, on the silk, but I appreciate you supporting me through that.
Of course.
How's Miss
Hey,
Jessica doing? How's Miss Jessica? She's doing good?
She's probably busy running around like usual.
Wow.
With our head.
Okay, everybody, good afternoon. We're
Hey,
going to
Randall.
come back to order. We're 2 minutes after 1 o'clock. And so I want to ask everyone to please turn on your cameras. Please turn on your video. Again, that's how we keep track of a quorum today for our meeting. So everyone, please be sure to activate or turn on your cameras now so we can get the quorum and get started.
We have quorum.
Thank you. And so now we will resume the discussion we were having prior to our lunch break, and that is which objective we would like to choose for our targeted disparity. And we chose our topic as disadvantaged people. And so now we have to apply that to one objective within the objectives on this plan. And I know there are many. So again, it's another difficult decision to make today. But we want to look to see what objective the council would like to apply to its targeted disparity.
I have a comment.
Yes, sir, Stephen, you have the floor.
I'm going to go ahead and say that health sticks out the most for me. So,
Okay, noted, sir. Thank you.
So for
So we have discussion, and if you want to be recognized, please raise your hand or let me know. Yes, Rosalind.
Can you remind me on the topic again, the discussions on the table again? Since we went on
Yes.
the lunch tape,
Yes,
when we
absolutely.
took our lunch break,
Yes,
please.
we are choosing or attempting to choose now an objective for our targeted disparity. Remember, we talked about disadvantaged people being our targeted disparity we want to use, and now we're looking for an objective. And Stephen just recommended health, as have some others today, I believe, earlier. But we have many possibilities here, and so we're looking to see what, as a council, we would like to choose for our targeted disparity for the 5-year plan. What objective we would like to apply to disadvantaged people to for our targeted disparity.
Jill Hano has her hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
What? I think I'm really confused. What are exactly our options for the objectives?
Well, we have there it is.
5 for community supports, 2 for self-advocacy, and at least 2 for employment.
And unfortunately, we need one.
Okay,
We need
I'm just on caught up. But
we need to choose one objective for our targeted disparity group. Stephen has recommended health. A few other people, I believe, earlier.
this is so hard.
Yes, it is.
Because if
Absolutely is.
we're basing choosing our objective based on our targeting disparity, then I have to health is, but then also housing is so pivotal for, I don't know.
I think everything here is vital, and
all
that's why we're
pivotal.
struggling. But unfortunately, we're going to have to try to decide on one objective for the targeted disparity. Now, let me say that all things listed in the plan we will work toward, and we'll spend the 5 years working on. It's the targeted disparities where we will focus our energy so that it is more accurately, or most accurately, I should say, measured. That's the one thing that our federal partners will be looking at to say, this is the area of emphasis that you guys said you wanted to see the most improvement in 5 years with your dollars. And that's what they're going to be looking at routinely and measuring routinely throughout the 5 years up until the end of the plan.
Essentially, the targeted disparity spans all of our objectives.
No, well, I mean, you want to choose one ideally, because if you choose more than one, those all have to be measured, data collected, and sent to the feds routinely, and that gets to be a lot of paperwork and a lot of work for the staff that
Okay,
would,
that makes sense.
yeah. So it's something we have to be mindful of, and it's their recommendation we choose one. It's our federal partners' recommendation to choose one, as
Okay,
hard as that is.
I did hear that when I was watching the meeting.
Okay.
We have some comments in the chat.
Can, let me ask the staff if someone could start reading the comments we have in the
I
chat
can
box.
read the comments, Randall.
Yes,
Miss
thank
Michelle
you.
Guillory says, I would suggest community living and supports as the objective includes several action steps that would include health. Hyacinth McGee said, I agree with Michelle. I believe community living and support should include the targeted, disparity. Lillian says, I suggest choosing housing since the disability community has lacked adequate housing options for years. Our disadvantaged targeted disparity will be especially affected by this issue. Dr. McGee also says we have 5 objectives in that area. Matt Rivera says, I agree with Michelle too. Mitch Ijan says, as many of you know, working with people with DD and others with disabilities, there is a major affordable housing crisis for people in our state. It is the starting point for many seeking more independence and stability. We must continue to have focus on increasing the availability of affordable, accessible, safe housing options statewide. And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. And so it looks like the consensus seems to be either health or housing from the community living and supports section. And so I would strongly urge us to, as hard as it is, to choose one that would apply to the targeted disparity. And again, everything on the list will be worked on. It's just this is what we'll be reporting to our federal partners as our goal to target for the 5 years that'll be the most measured of all our objectives that they're looking at throughout the 5-year plan. So I would urge, again, from what I'm hearing, it looks like health and housing are the 2 main objectives that are getting the most support. So at this point, I would recommend more discussion as to which one we believe it should be.
Randall, Nicole Banks has her hand raised, and so does Rosalind Heimel.
Nicole, you have the floor. And
Okay,
thank you,
thank you
Ebony.
for giving me the floor. Upon we are choosing between these objectives that's at the top, I have a question. The self-advocacy has 2 objectives, and the education and employment has 2 objectives. Is that all what we're considering in this also, right? Or are we just considering the health, the community supports, the recreation, transportation, and housing?
I think what we would like to do, what we ideally need to do, you see how self-advocacy has two items, health, education and employment, I believe don't they have four
I
total?
can't see at the bottom. I don't see the whole page.
If we could possibly reduce some of these and combine some of these objectives even further, I think that'd be ideal. Because
I would say some of them look like they could be intertwined with each
I
other.
think they do. I think they do. Upon reading it at lunch, I think a lot of them do intertwine. So if we could, I think, begin to pare down where, they do overlap and sort of combine, I would recommend no more than 3 objectives per goal. And so if we found a way to word it so that we have, say, 3 main objectives for community living and supports, 2 or 3 for self-advocacy, and then just note you can have less than 3, but I think if we could do no more than 3 objectives, I think that will make it a lot more concise and easier to review, both now and later for everyone. So I don't know if someone wants to make the motion to do that, but I would advise that if we could, combine language and make it more concise, I think that will help a lot. Because I looked a lot at Arizona's plan, and they have a budget that's almost identical to ours, which I think is a good measure to use. But they have a very concise plan that covers a lot of these same areas of emphasis, but they have like no more than 3 objectives per goal. I think that's very concise. It's easy to look at and understand, and it's not quite as much to read.
Right. Randall, I do agree with you. I think that if we can just put it down to maybe 3 of them and then maybe reword some of the things, we probably can we can get that, because some of these things up in some of the categories do intertwine with each other. But
Right.
those are housing and health. I think those are good places to start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Randall, Rosalind has her hand raised.
Yes, I'm sorry. Rosalind, you have the floor.
I was going to say the same thing what Miss Nicole did, but can we put the health and the living together to make it as one? Could we do that?
We're going to try. We're going to look at ways we can try to be.
And kind of because if we can do that, I want to make the motion on that one. If we could, we worded kind of putting health and living together, and kind of, for people where with the health and the living, if people live on their own in that, they could use a health plan, and that even if they live in an apartment or in some kind of house and all, and they need a health plan to really do it in, especially with doctor's appointments and all. I know doctor's appointments are really expensive and all, and that's why I'm kind of putting the 2 into 1. And I would like to make that as a motion.
Well, let's hold off on the motions just yet. I'll come back to you when we're ready for a motion, okay? Because right now we're just looking.
That's what I would like to do.
Okay, it's noted. Let's continue to review and see if we can get some of the language where we want it.
Yeah, but that would be a good goal, though.
Yes. Thank you.
And that's what, why can't we make that as a good goal? Putting 2 together. Them 2 together.
All right. Well, let's look at our options here. Do I have any other discussion?
You have 3 other hands raised, Randall, Dr. McGee, Lillian, and Tamisha.
What about Dr. Wilson? I've been holding my hand for a long.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Dr. Wilson.
They
Dr.
have
Wilson.
their hands
You have the
electronically
floor,
raised.
Dr. Wilson.
All right, I can wait
You
my
have the floor, Dr. Wilson.
Don't know when.
No, I'm not sure that's correct, Randall. There's several people that's had their hands electronically raised in the chat. And I think we need to decide if we are going to do the hands in the chat or if it's going to be physical hand, because there are several hands that are in this chat
Okay,
box.
well, then we can use the chat box. And so whoever,
So where does one raise their hand?
you can see it's
In the chat.
Dr. Wilson, if you go to participate,
One of them.
there are 3 dots on the far right side. If you press that, you should be able to raise your hand.
All I get is save chat. I mean, I don't know what to say. So that explains why I'm not being acknowledged, I guess. I get it, but I don't have that option for some reason. So I don't have
They
a.
should do,
My hand has been raised for point of order. And I'm just trying to get a sense of order.
Let's hear the point of order.
One, first of all, we do have to determine how we're going to deal with the raising of the hand and how that's going to be acknowledged. And if people need technical assistance, how we can better support them. Number 2, in terms of point of order, I want us to keep in mind to stay focused and stay on track on what we're discussing. We have really gone off into the weeds. I mean, oftentimes I'll jump in and say that. So I'm asking you, Mr. Chair, if we can get back specifically on what we are doing right now. And from what I'm understanding, there's a lot of discussion in the chat box that council members, a lot of recommendations from council members that can better assist us with remaining focused on the task ahead. There's several comments. We have Michelle Guillory, council member, Bambi. So can we get a point of order to get back to that so that we can get on track of where we are? I'm just concerned that we're going too far off into the weeds.
Madam Vice Chair, if you don't mind helping me keep track of the chat box, then we will use the hand raise feature in the chat box to acknowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So who had their hand raised first to your knowledge?
Ebony Haven mentioned a few names had their hands up. I see that those hands have lowered. But now I see Lillian Dejan's electric hand up.
Lillian, you have the floor.
I was just going to echo what Ms. Hyacinth said. My concern is that by investing our time into consolidating, these objectives, we're reinventing the wheel when the 5-year planning committee spent a lot of time on this. So I would suggest that we just kind of go back to focusing on the targeted disparities. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands raised?
You have one public member that has her hand raised, Ms. Kathy Dwyer, and you do have comments in the chat.
Let's let Ms. Kathy speak, and then after that, please read the comments in the chat, Ebony.
Yes, sir. Ms. Kathy, you have the floor.
Kathy, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, I must have pressed that by mistake. I did not mean to raise my hand.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. Okay, so Ebony, what comments do we have in our chat box?
So Mitch Idgen says, my vote is housing. It's such an important issue. Bambi says, we can just select community living and supports. I think Mitch says, I agree with Bambi. Dr. McKee said, we should just select community living and supports and add the targeted disparity. Mitch also says, I agree, let's choose community living and supports. He also says it's inclusive of both objectives. Jill Hano says, I am kind of thinking that covers everything, right? Tamisha says community living and supports would cover healthcare, housing, and access to resources within the DD community, crosses several areas. Jill says, okay, awesome. So can we consolidate? Dr. Wilson says, okay, he just needs assistance.
Okay. Thank you, Ebony. So is the consensus that we apply the targeted disparity to the 5 objectives of community living and supports?
Mr. Mitchell said yes, and I think I'm very confused. And also, there's a comment about Dr. Wilson. I apologize that he should speak, but he agrees with you all objectives with community supports.
Okay, thank you, Jill. I want to remind everyone, let's wait on to be recognized before speaking, please.
Sorry.
No, you did fine. I just want to be sure because we're all getting back from lunch, and I know it's hard to keep everything
Focus. Is that what
focused.
You do have 2 hands. I think Dr. Wilson has his hand raised, and Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Dr. Wilson, sir, you have the floor.
Thanks. I don't know. I use this all the time. I don't have the little hand. I don't know what's going
Okay.
on.
It's all right.
Just all I wanted to do is I like what people are saying about applying it one objective to all of the community supports, but I caution you to not combine those objectives. Remember, your objective is what gets measured. If you do something as simple as combining access to healthcare with transportation, you may do something wonderful with creating access to actually getting healthcare, but not do something wonderful with transportation. At the end of 5 years, your outcome is going to be we didn't move the needle, even though in fact you may have. So please think very carefully about combining your objectives, or you will create a situation where when you try to measure it, it will be unmeasurable.
Noted. Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions or comments?
Nicole Banks has her hand raised.
Yes, Ms. Banks, you have the floor.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was saying. I agree with Mr. Phillip.
Okay.
That was my question that's why I asked, early, are we doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or are we just doing it under each, those 3 sections? And when he just explained it to us about we may be cutting something and it may not be measurable for us, then now we're back to where we were before, right? Where we have to pick one particular objective, or we just leaving it like he have it is now, and we'll just see where it ends up in those 5 years. That's my question. Like, are we gonna go and go to each different thing? Like he said, you might have something good with health, but then transportation you might be slacking, and then we've missed the mark altogether. So are we going to I know that the committee worked so hard upon getting all of these objectives together, so are we going to just pick those out of those let's see, that's 9, 10, 11, like 12 objectives? Are we just going to go off of those 3 that's in the highlight, just based off of what Mr. Phillip just explained to us? Because we don't want to miss the mark. We do want to make some progress where it is tangible and we can see the data. But if we do it like that and then we can't see that, then is that really moving forward progress?
Well, I mean, we have to have a targeted disparity. So as hard as we did work and as much as we all agree this is all important, we do have to choose an area of emphasis. it sounds like overall that consensus seems to be the goal of community living, which would contain the 5 objectives you see listed. Those are
Okay, so can we just make a motion that we go ahead and
certainly
vote
can
on?
make that motion. Before
Okay,
you do,
can
though,
I
I need to
make a
make clear.
motion?
Before you do, before we
Mhm.
make a motion, let me make clear something. The language that you see in yellow under the objective for education and employment, if we choose community living and supports, that language will be deleted that you see in yellow.
Okay, so when it has like preventative services, health services, wouldn't some of that be classified under the like having the access to like early childhood services and testing and stuff like that, because that's a preventative thing that we're trying to get, as far as, you know, making sure that these kids are early diagnosed so that we can catch the problem earlier. So wouldn't that, I'm just, you know, just like you said, it's in yellow, so I'm just reading and seeing if that would be something that can kind of go with that, as far as the preventative health services, because that would count to me as a thing. Or if not, just let me know, you know, that's I'm off and that's not what we can do or whatever. But yeah.
Thank you for your comments. It's certainly something we can consider. And so I would request a motion if that's what we want to do, is make the community living and supports goal our targeted disparity in those 5 objectives. If we agree we don't want to pair them more concisely, those 5 objectives would be what would apply to our targeted disparity.
So again, this
Dr.
would,
McGee
we would
has-
have to show documented evidence that our efforts for the health, the community supports, recreation, transportation, and housing, we have effectively made change in all of those objectives. That's what's going to be required of this council.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. So those are very inclusive, but that's also a lot of documentation to have to produce. And so again, is it is it our intent? Is it what we want to make the goal of community living and supports our targeted disparity? Because that would automatically put those 5 objectives as having to be done, as having to be measured with improvements on each of those 5 areas. So I'm as chair, I'm thinking about, do I have a motion? For one objective.
Stephen has his hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Stephen.
I just wanted to say that that's a little too ambitious for for me, and I don't know how else to feel about that, but that's where I stand.
Okay, well, thank you for that input, sir. Do we have any comments in the chat box that need to be addressed?
Yes, we have a few.
Please read those, Ebony.
Mitch says, good point. So maybe we just choose 2 or 3 objectives at most. Dr. Wilson says, however, please do not combine objectives. An objective should measure one single outcome if you want less objective. Dr. Berivecchio says, it seems that housing and health resonated with me. Do we want to target those 2 objectives?
Okay.
Matt Rivera has his hand raised.
I'm sorry, I had feedback. Did you say Matt has his hand raised?
Yes.
Okay, Matt, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Randall. Would it be okay, I make a motion that we select community living and supports, and under that, we select number 1, health, number 2, community supports, and number 5, housing, which would eliminate number 3 and number 4. Not that they're not important, it's just going along the line. I think I've heard the committee state is that having all 5 would be just too ambitious.
It's very ambitious.
Okay, so essentially, if that is allowable, I would make that motion that we select community living and supports with number 1. Now it's changed with health, community supports, and housing as our objectives.
That's your motion, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second to Matt's motion for the 3 objectives you see listed under community supports?
I second, Randall.
Okay, Mitch seconds. So we have the motion from Matt is to select community living and supports with the 3 objectives listed on the screen for health, community supports, and housing. And that will be our targeted disparity. And so, do I have any discussion?
Dr. Wilson has his hand raised.
Yes, sir, Dr. Wilson.
Finally. Thank you, Marilee, for helping me. I always kept looking in the chat box for it, and it was.
You're welcome, no problem.
So I just want to confirm, because I was talking with Marilee, I don't want to make sure I didn't miss something. So we are going to have the health, not the health, the excuse me, the disparity group of disadvantaged separately for each of those 3 objectives. It's not going to become one objective. Is that correct?
The targeted disparity will be community living and supports with those 3 objectives applied for disadvantaged people.
Will each be targeted in terms of what activities are done to address it, and will each of those target areas, health, community support, and housing, be measured separately?
They'll have to be.
Okay, perfect.
If it's fast, they'll have to be.
Dr. Barry Vecchio has her hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Dr. Petty, you have the floor. Ms. Petty, you have the floor.
Sorry, I was muted. Is the recommendation from the council that we limit this to? I thought we were looking at trying to stick with 1 or 2. Do we feel like we have the capacity to address 3 objectives? You know, the measurement, the reporting.
If I'm being honest with you, at this point, no. But it's a 5-year plan, and so my hope is that we would get our staffing issues rectified quickly in the coming year, and get the team in place that would be able to meet those. But I'll be frankly honest, and it's going to be an unpopular opinion, but it is going to be a very heavy lift for and I understand completely how hard this is and how important every bit of this is. But I have to be honest on behalf of the staff. At present, it's going to be a very heavy lift, even with these 3 as your targeted disparity, because they're going to have to report on all 3 of these areas to our federal partners routinely, on each one, showing progress on each of these 3 objectives routinely. So again, just for your knowledge, that's going to be a lot for the staff to do at this point. And the staff is already, we have the legislative agenda we've passed that's going to have to be dealt with, that's ambitious, and I support it. But this is going to be a lot of work for them, and we have to be clear about that. A lot of work. So that's why I suggested, and that's why our federal partners suggested to me that we select one, as hard as it is, we select one, say health or housing or community supports, simply because we're going to have a period of transition as a council staff for at least the next year, if not a little longer. And so we're going to have challenges to meeting these goals, and that it will eventually have ramifications for us. I don't know exactly when, but when they give you advice like this, it's friendly advice, but it's also, you know, you really need to do this way because you're going to run into problems later if you don't. And that's how it was expressed to me. And so that's why I'm saying to you, we really, as tough as it is, we really need one objective from the plan. So, you know, that's what our federal partners told me. We can do exactly as y'all are saying. It certainly does pare things down, which I know will help make things easier to have just the 3 objectives. So I commend y'all on that. I know all this is hard. We as a committee had a tough time doing it. So we perfectly well understand everything in this plan needs to be done, and we get it. But we do have to look at resources in terms of staffing when it comes to this. So please do bear that in mind.
Matt has his hand raised, Randall, and so does Nicole.
Okay, Matt, you have the floor, sir.
Randall, thank you for that impassionate advice that only you would have, and I appreciate it. I will withdraw my motion on the fact that it's just too ambitious and too much, too robust for what we're capable of doing. And so I'll just withdraw that motion. So while I'm in support of community living, if I had to have my priority, it would be housing, just because of what we're experiencing in the Lake Charles region as well as statewide. But I'll just withdraw my motion, and I'll listen to the group's advice.
Okay, sir. So if there's no objection, Matthew has withdrawn his motion. Is there any objection? So with no objection, the motion is withdrawn. So now we're at the point of which one of, because I think we're all in agreement, or seems to be in agreement now that the motion is withdrawn. It seems to be consensus that the 3 areas of emphasis under community living have the most support. And so which one of the 3 would we as a council prefer to target as our targeted disparity?
Jill Hano has her hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
How many objectives have we had in past 5-year plans? And now that you're talking like COVID,
right?
There is COVID a factor of having factor into the number of objectives?
Well, obviously COVID is affecting everything about our lives, right? And so,
right.
Yeah, it's going to make it more challenging to meet the plan in terms of, I mean, bear in mind it's a 5-year plan, so you have a long time to get it done. However, once it begins, you have to report on everything within that targeted disparity regularly. And so reports will have to be issued and done and submitted. You'd have to ask Courtney exactly how regularly, but from what I understand, quite often, because they're looking at your plan in total, but they're lasering in on what did you say was your targeted disparity, because this is the one thing that you said you really, really want to see movement on. And so if we choose community living and supports, it's my understanding everything under those 3 would then have to be measured
Damn.
And reported routinely. And that would be a lot of work on staff to do at any point in time. To your question, Jill, about previous plans, all our plans have been ambitious. And our federal partners have noticed that. And while they commend it, they have personally told me, given the fact that we're so understaffed, that they didn't feel like selecting more than one would be prudent, because we will have staffing delays or shortage for, I'd say, probably at least the next year, if not 2 years, because you're going to have to allow time for a new executive director to come in and get accustomed to things and get their plan and their staffing together. And so you will have about a 2-year period, we suspect, where you would have less staff than you normally would tackle these. So y'all bear that in mind. I'm just the messenger, but y'all bear that in mind as we're making these decisions.
To Lillian's point, I definitely don't want, I think we are losing track of the goal in mind, because I don't want to undermine what the 5-year committees that literally virtually 4 days on, and but at the same time, I'm like, what are we trying to do right now?
Well, now the motion's been withdrawn, and so now we have to decide if I think we're all in agreement that community living and supports is where we're targeting our effort. So
I agree.
I'm focusing on those 3. So now you have to decide whether you want to do all 3, whether you want to have the goal as the objective. So therefore, all 3 of those targeted areas will have to be reported on routinely to our federal partners by our staff for the 5-year plan. Or do you want to select one of those 3 areas of emphasis, which is what the federal partners are recommending us to do? Do you want to select one, say health? And I'm not picking out that as the suggestion. I'm just picking the first one. Do you want to pick and say, okay, health is our targeted disparity? And so do you want that to be the targeted disparity that we use and then apply our disadvantaged persons to? Or do you want housing, which was another one that was popular in discussion? So what we now have to decide is, do we want what we had, which was the goal as the objective with 3, the goal is the disparity with the 3 objectives, which will be a heavy lift, I'm being honest, for the staff to do. Even at full staff, I will say this, our federal partners told me even when we were fully staffed, the current plan we're under, they regarded as too ambitious. And they told Sean and Sandy both that when it was passed, that they admire our work, and they said, Louisiana y'all can do great things. And so we'll let you do it. But they thought the current plan was too ambitious. And now you add in the issue of we're down 2 senior staff members, and you have the effects of COVID and all of these things in play right now. And then you're going to have staffing issues for at least the next year, I would suspect. We have to really weigh that. I think it's important to weigh that as we think about this. And so what do we want to be our targeted disparity? Do you want the goal, or do you want to choose one of the 3 objectives?
Nicole Banks and Hyacinth McGee have their hands raised, Randall.
Dr. McKee, you have the floor.
Thank you. And it's actually McKee. And I have to say that because my family would be livid if they hear the word McGee over and over again. So it is McKee.
Yeah.
But let me say this. That
Sure.
happens a lot, though. It's okay. I just wanted to put us back on track. You know, that's usually why I have my hand up. And so I just wanted to get some some clarification from our chair. Are you entertaining a motion at this time?
Yeah, well, yes. We need a targeted disparity today, so.
So if it's okay, I would like to make the motion. If you're entertaining it this time, at this time.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that number 2, targeted disparity, disadvantaged populations be aligned with community living and supports targeted area housing.
Okay.
I
Do I have a
the
second
motion.
to Dr. McKee's motion?
I'll second
Nicole
it.
Banks second the motion.
Mitch seconds. So I have the motion from Dr. McKee is to apply our targeted disparity of disadvantaged persons to the objective of housing under community living and supports. And Mitch seconds. So do we have any discussion?
Dr. Wilson has his hand raised and Jill Hano has her hand raised.
Okay. Dr. Wilson, you may speak, sir.
Okay, just real briefly, I'm like Hyacinth and several other people, Matt and some other people, housing is huge. I'm also like Stephen and some other people who talked about health. So my only concern is we go through a vote on one and people then aren't cognizant of if this doesn't pass, then perhaps we go to health. Is it within parliamentary rules to do a sort of a roll call and ask people?
We are going to do a roll call vote. Yes, sir.
But I mean, to put all 3 of them up there and have people just state which of the 3 objectives they feel is the highest priority to them or who they represent.
I would have to ask our parliamentarian that question to be precise about it. I think you're asking for us to basically rank which one and see which one gathers the most votes. Is that what I'm understanding, Dr. Wilson?
Whoops, sorry. If you said to each of us or whoever's calling roll call, state which one and staff are recording, you only get 1 vote. and
so
then when you get done,
you're basically asking us to vote for the one we like best of the 3, and whichever one got the most votes would be the targeted disparity.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Am I understanding you correctly? Okay, great. Madam Parliamentarian, is that allowable?
The current motion is on applying the disparity to the community living and supports housing. If that is, you must vote on that motion and only that motion. If it is voted down, at that point, someone can make a motion, which essentially is filling a blank that says, I vote that, I move that we select housing, community supports, and health. And in whatever order that motion is made, we then take a roll call vote on that item in that order. And whichever receives the majority vote first will be the one that is selected. But at current, you need to vote on the motion that is pending. If you vote it down, someone can then make a motion to essentially filling in the blank, which is, I move that we choose these 3 options, and recognizing that you can only have one, whatever order in which those items, multiple items are named, we vote on them, you vote on them, and then whichever receives a majority vote first is the one that's selected. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that clarity. We needed it. Okay, and so now we need to vote on the motion that's before us, which is to make housing our targeted disparity that we're choosing. And so if you vote yes for this, then you will automatically be choosing housing as your targeted disparity objective for disadvantaged people. Again, that's our complete target disparity, and it's under community living and supports. So to vote yes for this, you'd automatically be choosing objective number 3 as our targeted disparity for disadvantaged people. If you vote no, then this will be defeated. And if this is defeated, then we will move into Dr. Wilson's suggestion of we'll do a roll call vote, and you can just say which one of the 3 that you would like to see with your one vote that you would like to see be our targeted disparity. So we're going to move forward with a vote. If you vote yes, it will automatically choose the 3rd objective of housing under community living and supports. If you vote no, this motion will fail, and we will entertain a motion to reintroduce Dr. Wilson's idea of choosing among the 3. So I'm going to call for a roll call vote at this time.
Ms. Nicole Banks.
Yes.
Ms. Nicole Banks, yes. Dr. Patty Baravecchio.
Yes.
Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Kim Bazile.
Yes.
Ms. Bazile, yes. Ms. Melissa Baham.
Yes.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yes.
Ms. Baham, yes. Mr. Michael Billings.
No.
Mr. Billings, no. Mr. Rashad Bristow.
Yes.
Mr. Bristow, yes. Ms. Carmen Setnar.
Yes.
Ms. Setnar, yes. Ms. Lillian Dejan.
Yes.
Ms. Dejan, yes. Ms. Jill Eagley. And she's not out of her screen. Miss Michelle Guillory.
Yes.
Miss Guillory, yes. Miss Julie Foster Hagan.
Yes.
Miss Hagan, yes. Miss Jill Hayno. Miss Hayno, I need a response, please.
Yes.
Miss Hayno, yes. Miss Rosalind Heimel. Is she?
Yes.
Miss Heimel, yes. Mr. Mitch Iddens.
Yes.
Mr. Iddens, yes. Miss Jen Katzman.
Yes.
Miss Katzman, yes. Dr. Hyacinth McKee.
Yes.
Dr. McKee, yes. Mr. Stephen Wynn.
Yes.
Mr. Wynn, yes. Miss Bambi Polizzola. Is she with us? I do not think she's with us still. Mr. Matt Rivera.
Yes.
Mr. Rivera, yes. Miss Tamisha Sonye.
Yes.
Miss Sonye, yes. Miss Mary Tarver.
Yes.
Miss Tarver, yes. Dr. Phil Wilson.
No.
Dr. Wilson, no.
$18 yeses, 2 noes.
So the motion passes. So with that issue now decided, we have to now talk about our committee reports, correct, Courtney?
Actually, we have only decided the targeted disparity and which objective to assign it to. We need to have a motion to adopt the 5-year plan.
Oh, okay.
Now that we have compiled this information, let me get it all together in a document to share on the screen.
Okay, we'll give you a moment to do that.
Randall, forgive me. I'm about to shut off my camera.
Okay. Dr. Wilson, you wish to be recognized, sir? Okay, thank you.
Dr. McKee has her hand raised.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, are you entertaining a motion to approve the 5-year plan, or is the council reviewing that 5-year plan? I thought folks needed to review it ahead of time. Are we entertaining a motion
We are
to
entertaining a
approve?
motion to approve the 5-year plan. Courtney is currently adding in the language we just passed and making adjustments where needed. But the next thing we will be doing is we will be entertaining a motion to pass the 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so now you have on your screen that which we are seeking approval for the 5-year plan. And so with that, you can see there what our objectives are and what our goals are. I should say our goals and our objectives for the 5-year plan are listed there. And I will entertain a motion.
Excuse me, Randall.
Yes, Rosalind.
Is this one going to be with the health plan on it, or has that been
Listed
removed?
there in our plan, yes. Health will be an objective under community living and supports in our plan. If this plan passes, then yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I was reading this correctly or not.
You are. Health will
Thank
be
you.
listed right there as the first objective under community living and supports.
Oh, okay. Now I see.
The document on the screen is the suggested 5-year plan.
All right, because I didn't see it because it wasn't highlighted.
Sure.
That's why I was asking.
I understand. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Randall, you have 2 hands raised, Miss Nicole Banks and Miss Michelle Guillory.
Miss Guillory, you have the floor, and then Miss Banks after her.
I'd like to pose a motion to accept the plan as written.
Okay. We have a motion from Ms. Guillory to accept the motion, or the plan is written. It's our motion. And so
I'll
do
second
I
the
have a
motion.
second to Ms. Guillory's motion to accept
second
the
the
5-year
motion.
plan as it's written?
I'll second Nicole Banks, second the motion.
You second the motion? Thank you, Nicole.
Yes.
So I have a motion from Michelle Guillory and a second from Nicole Banks to accept the 5-year plan as you see written before you. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing no discussion, is there anything in our chat box pertaining to this motion? Hearing none, I'm asking now for a roll call vote to accept the 5-year plan as you see written on your screens.
Ms. Haven, if you are ready.
I'm ready, Courtney.
Thank you. Ms. Nicole Banks?
Yes.
Ms. Banks, yes. Dr. Patty Baravecchio?
Yes.
Dr. Baravecchio, yes. Ms. Kim Bazil?
Yes.
Ms. Bazil, yes. Ms. Melissa Baham?
Yes.
Ms. Baham, yes. Mr. Michael Billings?
Yes.
Mr. Billings, yes. Mr. Rashad Bristow? Mr. Bristow? We'll move on. Ms. Carmen Setnar?
Yes.
Ms. Setnar, yes. Ms. Lillian Dejean?
Yes.
Ms. Dejean, yes. Ms. Jill Iglay? We will move on. Ms. Michelle Guillory?
Yes.
Ms. Guillory, yes. Ms. Julie Foster Hagan?
Yes.
Ms. Hagan, yes. Ms. Jill Hayno?
Yes.
Ms. Hayno, yes. Ms. Rosalind Heimel?
No.
Ms. Heimel, no. Mr. Mitch Iddens?
Yes.
Mr. Iddens, yes. Ms. Jen Katzman?
Yes.
Ms. Katzman, yes. Dr. Hyacinth McKee?
Yes.
Dr. McKee, yes. Mr. Stephen Wynn?
Yes.
Mr. Wynn, yes. Ms. Baby Polizzola?
Yes.
Ms. Polizzola, yes. Mr. Matthew Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera, yes. Ms. Tamisha Sonye?
Yes.
Ms. Sonye, yes. Ms. Mary Tarver?
Yes.
Ms. Tarver, yes. Dr. Phil Wilson?
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, yes.
19 yeses, 1 no.
So the motion passes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. This is our 2022 through 2026 5-year plan. Okay, and so now our next item is our grievance committee report. And I'm going to call on Mr. Mike Billings, who's graciously agreed to be our chair of that committee, to give us that report, sir. You have the floor, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. The Grievance Ad Hoc Committee last met on July 22nd. At that meeting, the committee voted to approve a committee charter. The committee then worked on the initial outline of a grievance form using forms currently in use by LDH and one or more of the Families Helping Family Centers. The committee agreed to use the LDH form as the primary template and reviewed the Families Helping Families grievance forms for items to adapt, such as timelines for actions. Committee member Liz Gary agreed to reach out to ITAC. That's the Information and Technical Assistance Center for Councils on Developmental Disabilities, regarding grievance policies and procedures currently in use by other councils. Any other legal requirements, guidance regarding public and/or anonymous submittals, and timelines and best practices used. That's a summary of my report on the Grievance Committee. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to tell you that I did speak with LDH Legal on some of our other issues, and they did indicate they would be sharing with me some suggestions that I could pass along to the committee. So once that's done, and it may already be done, I haven't checked my email today. Once that's done, I will be getting with you, Mike, so that you get those recommendations.
Thank you.
To pass along to your committee for consideration.
Okay, we have Jill Hanno, you have a question? You're mute. You're muted.
I don't know if this is out of order or not, but what specific grievances are you referring to, or should I ask later?
Well, Jill, basically we're working on a grievance procedure where folks who have a grievance, whether it's a council member, anybody can file a grievance for the committee for the council to review. The committee is working on a procedure for that. So basically, if you had a grievance for some council to address, you would submit the form, and there would be a procedure in place for it to follow to make sure it gets a proper and adequate response.
Okay.
Anything else?
Liz Gary has her hand raised.
Yes, Liz.
Mike, I just want to make sure that you had received the follow-up from ITAC, because I had reached out to Cheryl Matney, and she responded back basically stating that they didn't have any specific things that ITAC recommended. And she said to just look at different areas and states, and you could Google that and kind of stuff. And so I just want to make sure that you had received that, because it did come back to myself, and I think she CC'd Sean and Marilee on it. I can't remember, but I want to make sure that you had received that so that we weren't getting any more follow-up from ITAC on that.
No, I don't believe I received it.
Okay, well then I'll find it and send it my way, send it your way. I apologize for that. I thought that was going to be passed on to you. Okay. Do we know when we will be having another meeting on that?
That's to be scheduled at this time.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Mike, just to jump in, and Liz, to provide some clarification, the information that the correspondence that you received regarding ITAC was put in an agenda for the second meeting of the Grievance Ad Hoc Committee, which was sent out to everyone, and it was meant to be August 7th. So that information wasn't intentionally withheld or overlooked. The committee was going to review it at their second meeting, which was scheduled for August 7th. And I believe at the time Randall was still the chairperson, and it was canceled to be rescheduled at a later date when our chairperson, Mr. Brown, advises. So I just wanted to share that with you all for transparency purposes.
Thank you, Mary Lee. If we have nothing else, I can move on to the Self-Determination and Community Inclusion Committee report.
Hearing nothing else, you have the floor.
Thank you. The Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee met on October 20th. We do not have any recommendations for the council to consider. However, we did have a discussion about self-advocate representation in LeCan and partners in policy making that we felt was important to share with the council. And I would like to ask Lillian to give us a brief on some of the information you shared with the committee.
Thanks, Mr. Mike. So I'm just going to give the same spiel that I gave the Self-Determination and Inclusion Committee. But before I jump into official business, I would like to welcome our newest council member, my cat, Cecilia. She may have slept through the entire meetings, but I really think she can make some real change in our community. And now she's leaving because she's angry. So I'm going to share some numbers on the screen. And I am going to try to find it. Let's see. I really hate screen sharing on Zoom, if I'm being frank. Mr. Brenton, I remember you shared that in an email. Would you mind, could you help me pull that up? Is that possible?
Sure, 1 second.
Okay, thank you. You'd think being the teenager on the council, I'd be a little more tech savvy, but unfortunately not.
Don't put yourself down, Lillian.
Thanks,
Because you are smart.
Thank you, Mr. Brenton. I appreciate it. So at the last council meeting, we received our public input survey report, and I looked at the people that we solicited input from. And if I'm remembering correctly, only about 8% of that was composed of self-advocates. And so I started wondering, where are self-advocates? So I asked our staff to pull some numbers for me regarding self-advocate participation in LeCan and in partners in policymaking. And the numbers I received were rather striking. So just as a quick overview, we have a total of 8 LeCan leaders across the state. Every single one of our LeCan leaders are parent advocates, with one identifying as a self-advocate as well. We have a total of 6,160 members of LeCan. Only 169 of those are labeled as an individual with a disability, while we have 1,023 labeled as a parent or a family member. So if we're relying on these numbers, people with disabilities only make up about 2.47% of our LeCan members. In regards to partners in policymaking, I asked our staff to pull numbers from the past 3 years. So to specify 2018, 2019, and 2020. For the participants, the data is based on those that graduated from 2018 and 2019, but 2020 is based on those accepted since they never got to finish their class. Over the past 3 years, we've had a total of 61 participants, yet only 10 of those participants were self-advocates, while the remaining 51 were parents. So that means that only 39% of our PIP participants from the past 3 years were individuals with a disability. Lastly, I asked for numbers on our presenters. So we had a total of 50 presenters from the past 3 years. Only 4 of those were self-advocates. That's only 8% of our presenters. And I think it's really important to learn from everyone in our community, from parents, from professionals. But I think it's especially important to learn about disability from people with disabilities. So I think it's safe to say that if self-advocates only make up about 2% of our LACAN members, and we have like one self-advocate as the LACAN leader, our policy endeavors may not be reflective of what self-advocates want and need. We really need to make a more concerted effort moving forward to solicit input from a more well-rounded group of stakeholders. It's really vital to make room at the table for everyone. So I guess the question now is, how do we move forward? Because these numbers aren't good. They're very uncomfortable numbers. Firstly, we need to make everyone aware of these numbers. All of our LACAN leaders need to know that we are prioritizing soliciting more input from our self-advocate population. Our PIP coordinator also needs to be made aware of these numbers so she can also make a more concerted effort to include self-advocates. In addition to that, whenever we get our new executive director, the council needs to make it crystal clear that this is an issue. This has been an issue for a long time, but we need to do better, and we are trying to do better. As a council, we have a responsibility to model trust, inclusion, and respect, because these are the foundations for community. And I don't think I'm the only one in feeling that this council hasn't felt like a community for a long time. We will not be able to get self-advocates involved without this. We already know that people with disabilities tend to be more isolated than our able-bodied peers. We're not looking for another dysfunctional system to be a part of. We're looking for community. I think we also should increase our opportunities for our community to learn about our history and our culture, because that's also a huge part of community. So many people don't know that the disability community has a rich culture. It's not expressed in our media. I didn't know that we had a history until a couple months ago when Crip Camp came out on Netflix. And I've been in the advocacy world since I was 13 and I'm 18 now. I was missing my history for 18 years of my life. But we already have opportunities in place for this that we could be infusing with these stories of our past, right? We had Disability Rights Day a couple months ago, but it was very unusual because it felt like Testimony Day. And I think testimony is one of our most useful advocacy tools. Yet testimony is usually used for fighting. We're fighting for our services, not celebration. And that could have really been an amazing opportunity to celebrate our community and make it something to be proud of, because I think we should be proud of our community. We can make it positive, right? You can say, this is where we're at, this is where we came from, and this is where we want to go. So in summary, we have some numbers here. They're not good numbers. But in this period of transition and in this period where we don't have a lot of direction, we can do better. We can look at these numbers and make these numbers not our numbers anymore. So I think I've talked enough. I'm sure most of you agree with that. So I want to hear from you guys, because collaboration's where the magic happens.
Thank you, Leanne. Mike, do you have anything else to add to your report, sir?
I do. I do have some to add. But Jill Eagley, you had your hand up, I believe. You're muted.
So Lillian, what you said is an implement, because I think that the DD Council needs to embrace more self-advocacy at the state and the national level. And it's a time of change. And the more representation agency has with self-advocates about who they are and how they can make a difference in their community moving forward is the best gift ever. Because I know that things are changing in Louisiana yearly, and I feel that we all need to move forward with self-advocacy and getting support, especially from the DD Council, because I need all the support I can get as a self-advocate powerful leader, because I can't do it by myself.
Thank you, Jill.
Good luck.
Lillian, I expect you to carry the torch and keep our feet to the fire.
I will, but I need y'all's help too. It can't just be a community-wide effort.
You'll have it.
Okay, because I'm expecting it.
You'll have it.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so we'll move on with the rest of the committee meeting. The committee also received updates on contractual activities and goals 1 and 2 of the council's FY20 action plan. A few things to mention: the Partners in Policy Making Ad Hoc Committee voted on by the council at its July meeting will meet on October the 29th to discuss how to move forward at this time. We also looked at the quarterly and year-end data for the Families Helping Families Center. This information is linked in our committee's agenda on the website. Most of the centers had difficulty reaching their advocacy due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the council's suspension of in-person activities. We also received an update on Act 421, Children's Medicaid Option. This is Louisiana's program designed to serve the TEFRA population. The program's application was submitted to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, on September the 1st, with a requested implementation date of January the 1st. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of confidence approval will be received in time to start on January the 1st, as CMS has not sent over its first round of questions. The stakeholder group is also looking for more representation from families. So anyone who's interested in participating should send an email to, I'm gonna spell it out, it's 421-CMO@la.gov. That's the numbers 421-CMO@la.gov. Also, an update on the impacts of the special session was also shared by Jen Katzman and Julie Hagan. We found out in the supplemental appropriations bill that about $36 million will be going to providers. A little over $6 million will go toward retainer payments for adult daycare center services. And the remainder is for a temporary rate increase due to COVID. Lastly, we continued our discussions from our July meeting about the Appendix K waiver exceptions that were implemented at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. At this time, the exceptions are set to expire on January the 21st, 2021. And that is all I have for the committee report. And do we have any questions?
Jill Hano has her hand raised.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
Okay, what did you say the stats from the public input was?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
Lillian, from back to the self-advocate stat. Sorry, y'all, it's a long day. What did you say the number was for self-advocates that participated in the last public input? Why am I yelling?
Okay, so please don't quote me on this. I would have to pull the public input back up, but if I'm remembering correctly, only 8% of our total public input survey was solicited from self-advocates. Again, don't quote me, but I think that's it.
I'm gonna quote you all day, every day. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
If we have no other questions, that'll conclude my report.
Okay, the report will be filed, and I'm going to break with the scheduled agenda because we have the Office of Aging and Adult Services, I believe, needs to go next due to time constraints for them. So whoever's representing the Office of Aging and Adult Services today, you have the floor.
Thanks, Randall. This is Robin Wagner speaking, and thank you, Courtney, for pulling up our report. It is, as usual, an accounting of the numbers served in both our Medicaid community-based programs and then in our traumatic head and spinal cord injury program and state plan personal assistance programs. On the next page of the report, you also have the data for our adult protective services program serving non-elderly elders who are, non-elderly individuals at risk for abuse, neglect, and exploitation. There are just a couple of things that I want to highlight for you as being somewhat out of the norm. If you go to the Waiver Registry waitlist portion of this, we had accomplished elimination of the waiting list for our adult day health care waiver, at least in regions where we have an ADHD center. We do have some folks on a list who are interested in getting that service if a center should open in their area. But we had basically eliminated that waiting list. And then in early March, the adult day healthcare centers were ordered to close their center-based services because of COVID. And so we have seen our waiting list grow because of those center closures. On the Community Choices Waiver Registry, there's an important distinction to be made between the 10,675 people who are on a list requesting that service and 5,641 who are waiting without a service. That's just by way of pointing out that of the over 10,000 who are on the registry for Community Choices Waiver, about half of them are receiving another home and community-based services. So that's good news that while they're waiting, at least they are getting assistance in their home. I should mention that because with the advent of the pandemic, we had to stop, seriously reduce face-to-face contact between our support coordinators and our participants, that we did see a slowdown in admission to our waiver programs and our long-term personal care services program while we were putting into place methods and protocols for remote assessment and remote contact. I'm happy to report that that the backlog that we had for people applying for long-term personal care services was eliminated at the end of July. So we are able to process people into that program and have been doing that. And then on the Community Choices Waiver, we are resuming waiver offers. So the progress that we've been able to make in reducing the number of people waiting on the registry without services is going to resume again. Also during the period of COVID, I just wanted to mention that despite some of the barriers to working with individuals in nursing homes, we have been able to continue and complete a good number of transitions. Since the public health emergency was declared, we have transitioned 109 individuals from nursing homes into community-based programs. And that is my report. And thank you so much for letting me go out of turn. I have another meeting I've got to get to at 3.
Thank you, Robin, for your report. Are there any questions about the report? Hearing none, the report will be filed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next speaker will be from the Bureau of Health and Services Financing, or Medicaid. So Jen, you have the floor.
Hi, Randall. Thank you. So I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to pull up our monthly report and share it as well. The basic information has already been provided on the Act 421 implementation. And so I don't necessarily need to repeat that. But if you have any questions, let me know. I also am going to go ahead and type in the chat box, the email address that was read out loud, just in case. I accidentally sent it only to the panelists, but I'm going to send it to panelists and attendees so that everyone can see it. So we're moving full steam ahead with implementation there and continuing our stakeholder work group meetings. In addition to that, pulling it up right now, you should be able to see it in just a second. Let me know if you can't. Okay.
I'm hoping that it don't knock all of y'all out, because normally it knocks me out.
Okay. Okay. Can you see it okay? So what I just went over was the Act 421 timeline. Also, I did just want to point out that we do have a website for Act 421, which is our main page, lva.gov, and then / Act 421. So you'll be able to find any resources on that program implementation, our stakeholder meeting presentations, our application to CMS, our basically all the general information and contact information is on that website. And so it's in our quarterly report. Also, we have our regular updates that are in our standard quarterly report around permanent supportive housing and our Money Follows the Person program. I do just want to point out on Money Follows the Person that there was an additional allotment announced just recently on September 23rd. So CMS announced about this supplemental funding opportunity available to the MSP demonstration states, of which Louisiana is one. And so we will be applying for that funding, and we can get up to $5 million in additional Money Follows the Person grant funds. And so we'll be applying for that in order to accelerate those, the LTSS system transformation design. So that's in progress. Self-direction, you know, we have our 2 fiscal employer agents now, Acumen and Morning Sun. They're fully operational and underway, and we have resumed our stakeholder meetings. So our last stakeholder meeting was recently held on October 7th, and we'll be having a larger meeting scheduled with all of the self-direction employers in the coming weeks. Electronic visit verification, which is a federal requirement for home and community-based personal care services, is implemented. It's now finished implementation in the final phase, which was for our early and periodic screening, diagnostic, and treatment services for personal care. So for those who like acronyms, even though we're not supposed to have alphabet soup, that's EPSDD PCS, for those who might be familiar with that one. So again, early periodic screening, diagnostic treatment, personal care services. And that was the last service that we needed to implement it with, and it went live October 1st. And it was the first service that we had in both our regular, like our legacy Medicaid, and now also in managed care. So it took a little longer to implement since it crossed over. Below are our behavioral health statistics that are in our CSOC waiver, participant counts by region, and then our behavioral health network adequacy report that we always include. So I won't go through the details on there since it's in the weeds, but it is posted through the DD Council for anyone who wants to look. And for applied behavioral analysis, we have for August 2020, this was our latest data. So persons with autism spectrum disorder who are in the Chisholm class is a little over 2,100 now, and we've expended $2 million. So all that is there. Any questions? Okay, I think that's it for me. Randall?
Okay, thank you, Jen. Your report will be filed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, could I get that kind of paperwork from you? So, I could, see it in writing in black and white or whatever.
Yes, definitely. Sorry, Rosalind. I filed it late this time, but the DD Council does have it now, so we can get it over to you.
We'll make sure you
I
get
would
that,
like
Rosalind.
So, I could read it, or, I would like to read it and kind of keep it in my files, and that way,
Disability.
I could, keep up.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Okay, and so next, Michelle, if you'd like to give your report, you can go next.
Okay, thank you so much. I do believe my report is online, and just to save time for everyone, I'd like to just highlight a few things. Due to COVID, all of the meal sites at the Councils on Aging and senior centers are still closed. They will remain closed until the governor releases them to be opened up. Cameron and Calcasieu Parish, the evacuees are still, the senior population and the disabled population that we serve are still somewhat dislocated. So we're working to make sure that they get food and make sure that their needs are being met. We're working heavily with the Emergency Management Coalition for the Aged and the Disabled, MDAC for short. We have been working tirelessly with a core group of individuals to triage the shelter and non-congregate sheltering to make sure that DME, durable medical equipment, or other needs are being met. We are now meeting weekly to make sure that those folks out there that are displaced have what they need to remain independent. The Elderly Protective Services Unit had to suspend the face-to-face interviews during COVID. We are now going out and doing face-to-face interviews for our high priority and our medium priority cases. Previously, they were sent to law enforcement, but now we're able to actually see those folks. And as a reminder, October 15th was the beginning date for open enrollment for Medicare Part D. It will end on December 7th. If you are on Medicare or you know someone on Medicare, you need to look at your plans and make sure that those plans are working for you. You can call the Aging and Disability Resource Centers for free help if you would like to do so. And in my packet, the phone number is listed. Any questions?
I had a question.
Yes, Jill, you have the floor.
What program did you say specifically was y'all suspending face-to-face abutment visits?
The Elderly Protective Services Unit, they help elders who are exploited, neglected, or abused. And during COVID, they weren't allowed to go out. And I see in a chat, Ms. Hyacinth asked what constitutes as elderly. Elderly in our state and from federal guidelines is 60 years or above. But we also serve the disabled community through our Aging and Disability Resource Centers.
Oh, my mom's gonna be so upset.
Any other questions? Thank you, Courtney, for putting my report up.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle.
You're welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Michelle, from the Governor's Office of Elderly Affairs. Your report will be filed. Excuse me. And so next we have, let's see, be the Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. So Julie, you have the floor.
Hello. So you guys covered a lot in some of the committee meetings, but
just will provide folks with a little bit information as well. And I do apologize, our report was late, but you do have it, and we can send it out as well. We'll make sure we do better next time. In terms of some of our hurricane and storm related information, we do still have 238 people that are home and community-based waiver participants in OCDD that are still evacuated. And we are continuing to work with them, with the families and the support coordinators to help identify resources and really help those families, you know, with planning in terms of whether they will be able to go back to the Lake Charles area or whether they need to look at, you know, potentially some other regions. The primary problem right now, as you guys mentioned in the planning discussions earlier, is housing, you know, for those folks. So, you know, again, we're still working with those. Fortunately, a lot of people have been able to get back home or to find another placement option, but there still are 238 displaced folks. In terms of our COVID response, we've talked about this at the last meeting, but just for folks' information, we do a weekly report that you can find on our OCDD website that on a weekly basis identifies the number of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who are supported through our home and community-based waivers, who live in our intermediate care facilities, and the number of COVID positive cases that we have for those two groups of folks, as well as hospitalization. And unfortunately, we have had some deaths for folks through our waivers and who live in our ICFs. So that is updated and reported on weekly, so you can find that information. Michael shared with you, we did have some discussion in the Community Inclusion Committee about the exemptions. I just want to point out, we did have a stakeholder meeting, which we recorded, and that recording can also be found on our OCDD website that talks about those exemptions. I do continue to have a lot of families reach out to me with concerns about family members not being able to continue to be paid caregivers. So, and some concerns with the other options. So we are continuing to look at that. I will say that any changes to that on a long-term basis will take us a while to get put into place. We had started doing some research and we're ramping up our efforts on additional research regarding other states. There's a lot of comments that other states do allow family members to be paid caregivers, and we are aware of some, and we're also aware that there are some exceptions there as well, but we're trying to ramp up our research there and get a better idea so that when we do get back with stakeholders to look at that, we have an idea and can share with you guys what some of those guardrails and exceptions are that are in place in other states, and some things that we've been thinking through that may work for others. And so we're committed to continue to have that conversation with people. The other thing I'll say, and Jen mentioned this too, that, you know, we are closely monitoring CMS, and we get new information from CMS on a regular basis about different things. So as of right now, they are saying those exemptions have to end in January, but they have given us information that they are considering an extension. So if CMS does give us that extension, then we will also look at what we need to do in terms of requesting other extensions for some of the exemptions that we have in place. So we're closely monitoring those things. We did in the last couple of weeks put guidance out that our adult, the official license is called the adult daycare license, but we typically call them day programs or day hab facilities. And there was some guidance sent out about their ability to reopen if there was a low COVID positive rate in their region. I did hear from, or in their parish, I'm sorry, parish positivity rate is what it's called. I did hear some concern from some families that about concerns about going back to the day program. And I will share with you guys that even, you know, once they reopen, that is a decision that the provider will be able to make in terms of whether they're ready to reopen or not, you know, and able to provide the safeguards and caveats that we have in our guidance. But it's also up to the individual, you know, that went to that facility, you know, in they working with their family or whatnot. And if there is still a concern, there wouldn't be a mandatory, you know, return to the day program. And so that's why we're really encouraging people to talk with their support coordinators and come up with a plan that works for them. You know, a lot of folks have asked me about some, you know, kind of specific guidance, and we're trying to give guidance within a realm of what makes sense, but also understanding that everybody's individual circumstance is a little bit different. And so that's why we really need to engage in that person-centered process so that we can help figure out what works for each individual, you know, as we continue to be responsive to COVID and all of the things that are changing. Also in relation to the adult daycare centers or day habilitation centers, we got a lot of comments from folks, and some of the folks in Medicaid received some comments asking that we push forward with what's called a virtual day habilitation. So there were some providers in New Orleans who did started up a virtual day hab and as a service. Well, we did put in our Appendix K a request for CMS to consider allowing us to add that as a service. And so we've not gotten CMS approval to do that yet. So as soon as we do get that CMS approval, we do plan to implement that as an option. But that's really where our holdup is on that right now. And that would be for kind of virtual day habilitation and some small group community activities. So we are waiting and hopeful that that will come. And then finally, in regards to early steps, we had during COVID, a lot of family members expressed concerns to us about the teletherapy and the limitations we had on the in-home visits to early steps. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to reinstitute in-home visits with some caveats. We are trying to limit the number of in-home visits to 2 per day. And the reason for that is because the primary concerns that the public health officials had is with if you have a provider that's going to multiple homes in a day, and at any point there would be an exposure to COVID, then they would be bringing that into all of the homes. And so we're just trying to limit that exposure. We do plan to revisit that in early November when the governor makes his next announcement. And we are closely monitoring to make sure that with those limitations of 2 per day, to do an assessment to make sure that we've not, seen any spread or any concerns. And if we don't have any concerns, and again, based on the governor's guidance and public health official guidance, we will continue to expand on those number of in-home visits that are permitted per day. So I'll stop there. Happy to take questions. I know we don't have a lot of time. And if there are individual questions, then please do. We have several different ways you can reach out to us in OCDD with any questions or concerns you have on an individual basis.
Randall, you have 2 hands raised. Mary Tarver has her hand raised, and Miss Kathy Dwyer.
Yes, Mary, you have the floor.
Thank you. Julie, I was wondering about telemedicine. I know there's some families that are very happy with the telemedicine for some of their therapies, and I wondered if that was part of the conversation about the extensions, but would that be something that might be able to continue past COVID?
So I can say for certain for steps, yes, that is something that we are looking to continue for families who request that, because
Right.
we found that there were some families who were just adamantly opposed to teletherapy and really wanted that in person. But then we found other families who were saying, oh no, we don't want anybody in the home who doesn't need to be, and we want to continue. So we want to have options available, depending on what, again, each individual situation is different. And so we are looking at that. We had actually been trying to have a teletherapy option in early steps for a while now, and really studying some of the best practices related to that. Unfortunately, it got slammed in there real quick. So there are some trainings we think would be helpful. There are some guidelines we think that would be helpful. And so we are working on that as well. I don't know if Jen has any more to say for Medicaid, but I know with Michael Boutte and Medicaid and some of the telehealth options that we have available in our state plan services, that they are, looking at continuation of those. But Jen, I don't know if you have more detail than that.
Sure. I can add a little bit, which is that we are looking to continue as much of the telehealth flexibility during COVID that we implemented as after COVID. As Louisiana was one of those states that already had a lot of telehealth flexibilities in place through managed care, and so we're able to continue that. One of the things that we're working on with the federal government is around the flexibilities that they provided temporarily on the not the services, but the way you conduct telehealth. They lifted a lot of the security restrictions, allowing you to do certain things on applications that might not have otherwise been allowed before, or through the telephone. Basically flexibility on the way the telehealth itself is conducted, that we were otherwise prohibited from doing prior to those flexibilities being enacted through the COVID public health emergency. So we've been appealing to our federal partners to try to get those to remain in place as long as possible, or forever. Unfortunately, that decision is not up to our federal partners at CMS. It actually falls under a different department with Health and Human Services on the federal level, OCR, which is, I forget what the acronym stands for. It's Office of something services. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But basically, it's in their hands for consideration. So we continue to appeal to the White House for those flexibilities to remain after the public health emergency ends. But as it relates to the services, as Julie said, we are looking to continue as much as we can post PHE.
Great. Thank you all.
Ms. Kathy, you had a question? Ms. Kathy Dwyer?
Yes, thank you, Randall. Julie, on the early steps, when you said that the in-home visits will be limited to 2 per day, is that the early step provider being limited, or the family being limited to having 2 visits per day?
No, the early steps provider, the family, there's no limit there. It just, may need to be telehealth as opposed to in-person. And we've given some guidance so that, if you got a certain number of visits, say speech therapy visits, then maybe, stagger them where if you get, 2 a week, then try to stagger those so that there's an in-home with some hands-on, and then potentially a telehealth. But no, there's no restriction or limitation outside of what's in the child's individual and family support plan in their IFSP. It's just the number of the actual in-home visits for the early steps provider.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Julie about her report?
So Jill Hano has her hand raised, and Rosalind Heimel has her hand raised.
Okay, Jill, you have the floor, and then after her, Rosalind.
Okay, hold on. Do y'all need to see me? No. Can you post your website in the chat, Miss Julie?
I will try.
Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Rosalind, you have the floor.
Hi. Is there a certain kind of link that I could really pull up on your website in that? Because you know, I don't know, you know, for individual person is the intent. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Is it like for in every individual family, or is it in every visual center? I don't know if I'm saying this right. You could correct me on it.
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're asking me, Rosalind.
For what you were saying, is there like a link for how many groups?
Oh yeah, the home, I'm trying to get a copy and paste we have an OCDD homepage, and then we have an OCDD COVID page. And so there's a lot of information there. We have our website separated out for providers and then for, you know, advocates and their families. So you can, and then a whole separate section just on COVID. So you can find all the information there on those web pages.
Yeah, I was just looking.
I wanted to see. Thanks so much on that, Julie, because that's what I really would like to see, and that where each individual home would have their own settings. If they have a rule, if there is a house rule for that family, or if it's, you know, for everybody in the household.
Yeah, so what we do a lot of times, what we've done with a lot of the guidance that's come from the Department of Health through COVID, if this is what you mean, Rosalind, is we attempt to give guidelines for providers to be able to use, but then they can take those guidelines and make them stricter or make them more detailed. So for example, I know, Rosalind, you live in a community home, a group home with some other ladies. In some of our community homes, we have folks who live there who don't really have a lot of medical issues. But then we have other group homes where you have people who have a lot of those underlying health conditions that they talk about. And so if you live in a home where you have a lot of individuals who get sick often, who get pneumonia, who have any of those other diagnoses, they might need to be stricter on, you know, things that they are doing and having people coming in and out. It might need to look different for them than it does look for other people who live in community homes where they don't necessarily have that high risk. So our guidelines are sent out for everybody and really kind of give the minimum guidelines and help give assistance. But then it's up to each provider or each facility to then figure out how that works best for them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it do, because why I'm we have 3 new members. Well, it's, we're not used to having them, and we don't know what kind of help they really have. And what's making me kind of, you know, being aware.
I think we lost
They have is with Madonna, and with Madonna, that's what's, you know, kind of putting like a question mark or a red flag straight up in, you know, in my head. So what kind of guidelines from like for Madonna, where she's coming from a home setting into a group home setting? I
Yeah,
don't know
so
if I
that would be
did
where,
it.
that would be where folks would just need to talk about that person's individual
Yes.
situation.
Okay, we're at our 3-minute mark there, Rosalind. So are there any other questions for Julie from other members of the committee?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Julie about her report? Thank you, Julie. Your report will be recorded. And at this point, we need to take a 10-minute break. And when we return from our break, we will hear from the Department of Education on their report. So at present, it is 3:03. So at 3:13, let's have everybody back. And remember, turn your screens on when you get back to your computers so we know you're present. Enjoy your break.
Randall is 3:12. Is that, we're going to
Yes.
start? We're
We
gonna
have one
start
more
in
minute. We have one more minute. At 3:13, I'll call the meeting. Here we are. It's 3:13. I'm calling the meeting to order. So everyone, please turn on your screens. Again, please turn on your computer screen so we can see you. That's how we establish our quorum today. And I am told that our representative from the Department of Education has had to leave us. So Courtney, if the staff could please submit their report into the record. Thank you. And our next presenter will be Dr. Phil Wilson from the Human Development Center. So Dr. Wilson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And thanks to Bambi for letting me jump the queue here a little bit. I'm going to be on a meeting. Hopefully Julie's going to be on that meeting. I'm not sure. Coming up in about 15 minutes with Mr. Thomas and some other folks. I'm not going to go through our report. We submitted it. You have it. And if anyone does have questions or concerns, please email me. I'll put my email address in the chat box when I finish here. But I will just briefly mention, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I've been talking with Courtney and also Chris Rodriguez at Disability Rights Louisiana. And a couple of our staff from all three agencies have been kind of looking at the data that Julie alluded to in her talk on the COVID data. I have a number of questions, and part of the, we have a concern. I will state our major concern, and maybe in this discussion, it'll all be addressed, and that'll be a great thing. But most of our concerns really are around not really having good definition of the variables that LDH is tracking. So when we look at the data, we're not clear how to interpret some of it. So we may be interpreting some things from the LDH data on number of individuals who've been tested, number of individuals who've been come down positive, a number of individuals who've been hospitalized, number of individuals who've passed away, et cetera. We just aren't quite positive we understand how those things are being defined. So we don't really want to like make a lot of statements because until we actually have some better understanding of what those data really mean. But my primary concern at this point, and I think probably for the others who'll be on this phone call or Zoom meeting, I guess, had to do with plans for people living in either ICFs or even for that matter, home and community-based service settings who are contemplating or have, I'm not clear on that, returning to whether it's day treatment or I see Chris down there. Sorry, Chris, if I'm stealing your thunder here. Returning to those settings without knowing for sure whether or not they are COVID negative. If that happens, we're very afraid of being doing something that's going to put lots of people at risk, both the individuals from those settings, the staff who are working in the day treatment or sheltered workshops, and the staff who are supporting them back in their residence. So I'm not trying to say that there won't be great answers and we'll all feel better, but I will say that I'm sure between Julie's office, Mr. Thomas's office, our collective DD network, we will try to share whatever comes from that meeting with the council and the council members. So that's all I really wanted to say, and unless Julie or Chris wants to add something to that before I jump off this to go to the next Zoom, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for Dr. Wilson about his report? Hearing none, sir, your report will be entered into the record. Thank you. Thank you for your participation today. Other comments in the chat box in relation to Phil's statements?
Yes. Miss
You
Kathy
please.
Dwyer says, I think families have the same concern, Phil. I know I do, and most are high risk. Matthew says, I share your concerns too, Phil. Not an expert on infection control. However, seems too soon to reopen day.
Okay. Thank you all for your comments. Okay, and so our next item is Ms. Bambi Polizzola and the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. Bambi, you have the floor.
Turn your mic on, Bambi. No, Bambi, turn your microphone on.
Bambi, we can't hear you.
Ms. Polizzola, will you have to log back in? Okay. Mr. Rodriguez, would you mind go ahead and giving your report for disability rights, and then we'll let Ms. Polizzola come back in?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize. I had to be absent earlier attending some meetings, but just very briefly, I think.
Hey, can you adjust the microphone, Chris?
Sure.
There's
Can you hear me?
feedback.
Oh, feedback.
Yeah, we can hear you, but it's just feedback.
Okay. I'm not sure how to fix that right now. Try and get through it. I don't have a whole lot to say. Phil kind of commented on, I think, what we were going to highlight, just that we're in a collaborative process with our DD network partners, of which we're obligated to work together under the DD Act, the piece of legislation that we were all kind of established under. And one of the programs, or one of the projects that we thought might be good to have all of us focus on is just
There
trying.
you go again, Chris. Feedback.
I'm not sure. Maybe let's try this. Trying to kind of crunch the numbers and figure out what's going on with the data with respect to people with developmental disabilities and COVID. And some questions that we have. I do want to say thank you to LDH, who, in case you haven't noticed, I encourage folks to check out the weekly, sometimes bi-monthly reports that they put out there on the COVID-related statistics for two different populations, one the ICF folks and the other the Waiver folks. They've been having that up for the last several months. There's a metric that really helps us understand better what's going on, and that was the number of individuals being tested that they have recently incorporated into that report. So I think that's a really great metric that helps us continue to evaluate what's happening. Disappointingly, however, I don't know how many folks have been able to get on the LDH website and actually read their testing plan that was published several months back, which does state that the state planned to or has a goal of testing every individual living in congregate settings, and it does specifically mention the ICF population. It wasn't until a couple weeks ago when we inquired about this to evaluate the success of that plan that we found out that recently had they made it to 50% of the ICF folks being tested. I know that we have a meeting here in a few minutes to discuss that with LDH, and we'll inquire to what the plan is to finish up testing there. But as Phil said, I think we have great concern with the fact that these DAHAB programs have been allowed to reopen absent meeting certain goals with respect to testing within the ICFs, and knowing that a lot of those folks are high risk. We've crunched the numbers and we have some statistics that we're going to share with LDH. Again, as Phil said, it's kind of hard to interpret the information provided. We haven't gotten quite the metrics that we want to have. But as an example, this is a statistic that we've taken from their last three reports. The last three reports, again, have been the only reports that have let us know how many people have been tested. So between September 24th and October 15th, we know that the number of people who were tested in that period, according to the reports, were 112 people were tested during that period of time. And of those 112 people, I believe, maybe it's more, actually, excuse me, 139 people were tested during that period of time. And approximately of the individuals that were tested within that time period, approximately 45% came back positive. So if that's the case, I mean, these are alarming statistics that we want to, number one, talk to LDH, which we are going to in a few minutes, to say, are we missing something? Are these numbers, what are we missing? Is the statistic that we've come up with accurate? And if so, doesn't that create concern? And if it does create concern, along with other statistics that we're going to share with them based off their own reports, why are we opening up these day hab facilities that could really facilitate the spread amongst a very vulnerable population? So we're going to be discussing that. And as Phil said, I think we could definitely share a summary of how that meeting goes, at least to a certain extent, with the council as well.
Thank you, sir. Is that the conclusion of your report to us?
That is, yeah.
Okay, are there any questions for Chris about his report?
There is a comment in the chat, Randall, but there's no hands raised.
Okay, could you please read the comment?
It says by Ms. Kathy Dwyer, it seems those statistics need to meet the same positivity rate as parishes do.
Right, and we actually have those statistics. I want to talk to LDH to make sure that we're understanding their reports before we discuss them, because they are pretty staggering when compared to the general population in terms of positivity rates and things like that. So hopefully we'll have some.
And so y'all will be meeting with them this afternoon?
Yep, about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, don't let us hold you up. That's important work. So thank you for your report today. And it will be entered into the record. Thank you, sir. And so next, Bambi, are you available for your report?
Hope I am. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much. We have our report that we've submitted, but there's just three things that I think in addition to that I wanted to just share with you guys. Most importantly, which I think most of you should know, is that Saturday is April Dunn's memorial service at 10 a.m. and it's going to be at St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church in Baton Rouge. And it will be streaming on their Facebook page, and that's St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church. People can attend in person. There will be all the social distancing rules, will be in place. Anyway, just wanted to make sure that you were all invited, and I know her mom would appreciate either your attendance or viewing of that on social media. The other thing is, which was in our the summary or the report for the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs, and that is our annual Gold Awards and Inclusive Art Contest. The deadline is November 2nd to submit nominations, and I hope that you do so. And we will, we're not sure what format we'll have the Gold Awards this year, but we will definitely have that and plan on having that in December. So please, I encourage you to submit nominees. I know you all know people who are very worthy of receiving that award. A lot of the issues that have been talked about today are issues that we're working on. So I don't want to repeat any of that, but the last thing I just wanted to share with you is that we are so excited and appreciative that we have Lillian Dejean has been working as an intern in our office this past semester. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys that that she's there and really doing some great work. And if you think that our office is doing any better, it is probably because of Lillian. So that's it. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Bambi. Are there any questions for Bambi about her report?
Rosalind has her hand raised, Randall.
Okay. You have the floor.
Bambi, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
You were saying about April Dunn's services. Would that be online? Do they have a certain link for her? Do you know of?
Yeah, so it's going to be on the Facebook page of her church, which is St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church. I'll try and find that and copy that link in the chat. Okay, but it's St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church in Baton Rouge. So you can find that on Facebook, and the services are supposed to be streaming. That's at 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, that's this Saturday?
That's this Saturday. Yep, not tomorrow, but the next day.
Oh, okay, because that's what I wanted to find out. Because I was going to try and link onto Facebook and that for it. Because April and I were really close.
Yeah, I know that they'll appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you know what time it's going to be for?
10 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Now, for the other question I wanted to ask, how is the other he was mentioning for, what was it?
The Gold Awards?
Yes, Golden Awards, yes, thank you.
Okay, I'll post the link in the comments as well.
Oh, okay. Would that be on a Facebook or no?
I'm sorry?
Would that be on the Facebook as well, or is that going to be a part?
I don't know how we're gonna do it. I don't know how it's gonna be. In the past, it's just you had to come in person, but this year I'm confident that we're gonna have some type of online way for people to view it. It'll probably be through our YouTube channel. Or
Would it be on YouTube or would it be on Zoom?
It might be both. I'm not sure yet, but I'll get that information to everyone as soon as we have that finalized, okay?
Okay, then.
Does anyone else have any questions for Bambi and her report? Thank you, Bambi. Your report will be entered into the record. And so our next report will be from, let me make sure I have it right here. Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. Melissa, you have the floor.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. In my actual report that you have a copy of, you'll have the statistical information that we generally provide, and I can answer any questions that you have, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things. But first, I want to start with an update on customized employment because that inadvertently did not get into the report. I think I've reported before that LRS recognized that we needed to develop a sustainable training model for vendors that wanted to provide customized employment training. So we collaborated with WinTAC, which is the Workforce Innovation Technical Assistance Center, and the LSU HDC to develop a training for certification so that individuals could get certified in customized employment. So I want to let you know where we are with that. At this point, the LSU HGC staff have been trained in the online modules, and the training is done by the University of South Florida. but that training has been complete. And our next step is we'll have to identify some CRP staff to do the training, mentoring, and technical assistance with LSU HDC. So we are progressing with that. We did get, it got backed up a little bit, obviously, because of COVID-19, but we are getting back on track to do that. So at some point after LSU goes through all the online training, which they've completed that, but go through the mentoring with the contractor, which is University of South Florida, and do some mentoring while they are training some CRP or community rehabilitation program staff, then LSU HDC will be able to certify individuals and customize employment so that we have someone here in Louisiana that our vendors can go to get that certification. That's the end goal of that. Just our COVID-19 update. All of our offices are now open to the public. We are seeing clients in person. However, some offices are electing to do that by appointment only just to make sure we keep everything safe. We are still close to the public here at the LWC, the Workforce Commission main campus, but all of our offices, including our Baton Rouge office, which is actually across the street from us at the Louisiana Workforce Commission headquarters, is open. And we are, I'm happy to report, we are starting to see an increase in applications. And we are still seeing clients virtually if they elect to do so virtually and still don't feel comfortable coming to the office. We are definitely still doing it that way. And the last update I want to give to you is we are trying to employ what we call a REDS, which is a Rehabilitation Employment Development Specialist, which is a job developer in all of our offices. And we have, since my last report, we have been able to hire individuals in Monroe and in Baton Rouge. So we're still missing several regions, but we're still in the hiring process for that. We have gotten approval to hire many positions in LRS. I think most of those have closed already in civil service, but I'm excited about that because a lot of the problems and challenges that we've had recently is because of the lack of staff. But we are in the process of hiring several individuals across the state, most of which obviously are rehabilitation counselors. So that should help improve our customer service and wait times. So I'm excited about that. But that's all I have. But any questions or any other topics that you'd like me to address, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you. Melissa, does anyone have any questions about Melissa's report for her?
This is Courtney. I have a question.
Yes, Courtney, you have the floor.
Hi, Miss Melissa. I have just a quick question. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the meeting yesterday. I want to make sure that I have some clarity on something that was discussed. So the council, it has been pursuing certification through Mark Golden Associates for customized employment. Just wanted to make sure that if any vendor or any employment support professional in the state of Louisiana chooses to get certified through any of these mechanisms, and once they've completed certification, that they will be able to provide the customized employment service. Is that correct?
Yes, as long as it's an approved training program, which Mark Golden Associates is, and they go through all of the components for certification. Yes, I was not aware that we were doing another cohort, but yes, as long as they complete the certification process.
Right. And I think UNT, University of North Texas, also has a program as well. Am I correct in that?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to talk to Angela.
Okay. Just making sure what our options are. Thank you so much.
We have any other questions for Melissa with her report?
Randall, Nicole Banks has her hand raised, and so does Kelly Monroe.
Okay, Nicole and then Kelly. So Nicole, you have the floor.
Okay, that was my question to piggyback off of the lady that just spoke. So anyone can go and get certified in doing these specialized or customized employment trainings, correct?
I'm sorry, are you asking if anybody
Yeah,
can?
if anybody, like, say if I just want to go and get training and see, can anybody go do it? Or does it have to be like certain individuals?
Now, anybody can get certified. You have to go through an approval process to become a community rehabilitation program at LRS. So if you're talking about a person who is not an established vendor with LRS, I mean, we do have criteria just involved in becoming a vendor of ours. But anyone can go get certified, correct? We just have to make sure that it's approved by ACRE or one of the certifying bodies.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my question. Thank you.
All right, and Kelly, you have the floor.
Thank you, Randall. Melissa, is there any way that we could get something in writing that kind of like describes like what is going to be an approved
Customized.
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Yes.
What would be an approved program that people could go through? I mean, some people are already utilizing other companies, and so just want to make sure that they would qualify. Is it the same qualification besides the certification piece that you have for the other training? As I think it says something about that it has to be a university-based training. Is that the same criteria with the additional certification attached to it, or?
I'd have, Angela would be better at answering this than I have because she's been keeping up with this. But I can tell you what we're requiring for customized employment is definitely a level above what's required for supported employment. We don't require certification in supported employment, but we are requiring certification in customized employment. So we just have to verify that that it is an actual certification that the person is receiving and not just a certificate of completion. It has to be some type of competency-based certification.
Okay. Is there any way we could get something in writing so that we can send that out to the other CRBs?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions for Melissa in her report?
Jill Hano has her hand raised.
Jill, you have the floor.
Okay, Courtney, I was in the other room, but what are y'all saying about Mark and Gold? Like, can you? What are you saying?
So the council has been sending employment support professionals for customized employment training and certification, and Mark Gold and Associates has been the company to provide that training.
I always say Mark and Gold. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Melissa and her report? Hearing none, thank you, Melissa, and your report will be entered into the record. And I believe our final report for today is from the Office of Public Health. I'm not sure who is representing them today, but you have the floor.
Thank you, Randall. Patty Baravecchio here with the Bureau of Family Health. I have a very long report that has been submitted and is available online. I'll just touch on the points that most, I think, are of the greatest interest to the group at hand. The Children's Special Health Services clinics that are offered in the public health units. These are specialty providers in area where that lack provider capacity, meaning access to enough providers for particular services that accept Medicaid insurances and such. So Those services are still available in those select regions. They have gone back to doing mostly in-person visits, but telehealth services are still available to families who are concerned with doing face-to-face services. In addition, we have the Family Resource Center. That was another big shift with COVID. We have the Family Resource Center that was housed at Children's Hospital in New Orleans has now become a virtual resource center. It is available to serve any family that has a child or youth with special health care needs with resource and referral services. They can contact them. The contact is in my, I'll put it in the chat when I'm finished speaking, but it's a direct email to the Families Helping Families or to the Family Resource Center. And speaking of Families Helping Families, we are also partnering with Families Helping Families. The parent liaisons that used to provide peer support and resource linkage in the public health units at the Children's Special Health Services clinics are now available to anyone in the community with a child or youth with a special health care need that needs peer support, system navigation, resource and referral services at the community level. So they, anyone who wants to avail of these services can reach out to their regional Families Helping Families organization. And the rest of it, I think you be easiest for everybody to just review the report. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Patty about her report? Hearing none, Ms. Patty, thank you, and your report will be entered into the record.
Thank you, Randall.
And that concludes our reports for today. And we have a piece of business to finish before we move to public comment. Brenton, weren't you asking earlier when we were talking about the legislative agenda about needing a dollar amount for the wage increase amounts being asked in the legislative agenda?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we need some guidance about what you're looking for in funding for direct support workers' wage increase. I mean, in previous years that this has been done, they've said, oh, you know, we want to do $1 more an hour, $2 more an hour, or is there just a kind of what is the council looking for from this particular item on the agenda, so we'll know what direction we're supposed to go, and we can start trying to create fact sheets.
I mean, we're going to leave it for public comment, but I would recommend that we follow previous guidelines or previous historical what we've done and have a dollar amount attached to say $1 or maybe $2 more is what I would recommend. But I'll leave it now for discussion. So how do we feel about it? Obviously, we approve that we're asking for it. And so now the staff would need clarification as to how much we're asking for.
Randall, Matt has his hand raised, so does Nicole Banks, and so does Kelly Monroe.
Okay, Matt, and then Nicole, and then Kelly.
Thank you, Randall, for calling on me. And I apologize, I didn't participate in the committee meeting that came up with this recommendation. The Department of Labor classifies jobs based on a star rating. And currently a direct service worker is a 1-star rating, which basically is the lowest of the stars. If we could raise it to a 3-star rating, direct service workers would qualify for a number of federal benefits as far as training, childcare, the community colleges would essentially assist with training our direct service workers because they could qualify for federal funds, and then they could provide and pay employees to get trained at the community college level. So I'll be robust and say a $2 an hour increase, although legislatively that may be a tough row to hoe. However, I see this as becoming a profession, and with the additional training and childcare that could be given to these individuals at no charge and get paid to go to school, it's worth going for that high water mark. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so Kelly, I believe you're next.
Hey, just to give you an idea of what $2 an hour would be, I believe last time when we did restore the rate back to 2008, it was a $2 increase, I believe, and it was $38.8 million of state general funds. So that was without the match.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And was it Nicole?
Yes, sir. And then Tamisha Sonier has her hand raised.
And
as
Nicole,
well.
you're next, and then Tanisha, you follow Nicole.
Okay. So I worked in the direct support care for 5 years, and you know, I got when they got the little percent raise, but to be honest with you guys, to hear a different side of the actual support care worker, it depends on what company you work for, because some of them provide mileage for you to go see these people. Some of them provide, you know, incentives for you, but then some just provide just a straight base, you know, uh, I think the most you can get right now is $16 an hour. Well, if you look at someone that has children that may don't have the education like that, and that has to pay rent and all of that stuff, is really not enough for them to sustain and have childcare and do their job proficiently, especially if there's one of the companies that don't do the mileage and don't give the incentives to help them out with the cost of doing the whole direct care worker. So if we can have current data, not from 2008, we need current data that we can actually base our numbers off of, so that we can get a more concise number of how to move forward as far as a $2 raise, or like Matthew was saying, raise it up to a 3-star position, you know, because it is lower, but that is a profession that I feel like it is going to, you know, they need schooling for it, they need training for it, and it really helps people get to the place that they need to be. So it's very important that these direct care workers are feeling valued and they want to go to these places, because to tell you the truth, they need a lot of males in this area, and males don't take these positions because they pay so low, and these men have families to feed, and they have, you know, they are the breadwinners, and you can't really do good work with $16 an hour. Like, that's not going to help them feed their family. They're helping someone else, but then they're struggling themselves. So I just want the council to just take in mind of all of that coming from the other side of the actual direct care worker.
Thank you. That's an important perspective, and thank you very much, Nicole. Tamisha, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I totally agree with Nicole and Matt. I have more some questions. I guess more than a statement, more or less. One of my questions is regarding one thing that Matt said, and I'm glad you provided that insight, because that does help let us know if we were able to get direct support workers up in the Department of Labor, that would help to support that those funds not being taken out for that training and things like that. So that would, you know, allow for more income for them. So how do we go about, or does someone know, asking the council members or Matt yourself, if that was looked into with the Department of Labor? How are those excuse me, y'all, support workers able to climb the ladder with stars? What is the process of that happening? What's involved in that? So that maybe, you know, that could be something that's worked on. And I got a two-part comment. And the other situation, who could we get, piggybacking off of what Ms. Nicole said, who do we get to provide that updated data? Is there a certain entity that we could get to research that information to provide to the council? Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Could you answer her question? Do you have that?
Yeah, and I worked with the local Lafayette Community College SLCC here, and they informed me about the star rating, and it's based on wages. And at the time, this was pre-COVID, it was a 1-star. So what I'm committed to do is getting more details on the star rating and provide that to Courtney so she can share it with the group.
Thank you.
I'll do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So do we need a formal motion, or does everyone agree with the $2 ask for a wage increase for direct support workers? Is there anyone who objects to $2 an hour wage increase in the legislative advocacy agenda? Do we have anyone that says no? Then I would. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Yes, that was me. I had my hand raised.
Yes, Rosalind, do you have something to say?
Yeah, but instead of doing 2, I want to really suggest here, could we go with $3 instead of 2 per hour?
Well, we could, and that's certainly a motion someone could make, but I think that $2.
Could I make that a motion?
$2 would bring us to the level that would allow workers to get additional benefits and training. I think, given we had a long discussion earlier today that we will have a challenging budget year next year, I think it's fair to leave it at 2 for now. And certainly next year, if things improve, we could look at raising that. But I think that $2 would be a fair ask at this point. And I would encourage the $2 to stand at this point.
Well, why I was asking is because I know maybe like some people down here, you know, where I'm at or whatever in Jefferson, they would really disagree. I don't know. It's just me, you know.
Okay.
It's just my thoughts.
And so I need a formal motion for this to be put in for the $2 an hour wage increase for our direct support workers. Someone make that motion?
I would do it. I will make a motion then.
Okay, Rosalind makes the motion. Does anyone second?
I second the motion.
Mitch seconds the motion. So you have Rosalind who makes the motion and Mitch who seconds the motion. I'm going to ask, does anyone say no? Does anyone have a no vote for this? Not hearing any no's. The ayes have it, the majority. Ms. Sonia, do you have something to add?
Mr. Chairman, I abstain. I just want to have that on the record.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask that, did I? Does anyone abstain?
Randall Kim Bazile abstains.
Okay, thank you, Kim. And so we have Kim and Tamisha abstain.
Hyacinth McKee abstains, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Randall
Okay, so-
Patty Baravicchio abstains.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Patty. That's noted. So does anyone else abstain? Does anyone object? Does anyone say no? Hearing no no's, this passes by majority. Thank you all. Does Miss Kathy Dwyer have a comment? I can see it, but I can't see the whole thing. Ebony, can you read it for us, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. She said you could also add a caveat, as someone stated earlier today, to make it an annual commitment by the legislators to increase it a couple of dollars per hour each year until they reach a livable wage.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion of that?
Do we need a motion to do that?
You would.
I make a motion that we do that.
And so the motion would be to add the caveat of, what was the language on that again, Ebony?
It would be a rate, a commitment to a rate increase each year until we reach a livable wage.
And so that's your motion, sir.
I don't know. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do I have a second to Mitch's motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Nicole. So we have Mitch's motion of a commitment to raising the amounts we ask for until we reach a livable wage. And that's been seconded by Nicole Banks. And so do I have anyone who objects to the motion? Does anyone say no? Do I have anyone abstaining?
Kim Bazile is abstaining.
Okay. Kim?
Sorry, Tamisha. Abstain.
Ms. Sonia abstains.
Isa McKee abstains.
Dr.
Jen
McKee
Katzman
abstains. Jen Katzman abstains.
Patty
Any other?
Garavecchio abstains.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Does anyone else abstain? Who says no? Does anyone say no to the motion? Hearing none, it passes by majority. Thank you all.
Randall, this is Jen Katzman. Can I make a quick correction on the earlier vote for the $2? My Zoom was not working. I couldn't unmute, but I would like to have the record reflect that I abstained as well.
Okay, it certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Randall. Jill Haino has her hand raised.
Yes, Jill. You have the floor.
Sorry. This for this increase, this is using state general funds, correct?
Yes, it would be.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Thank you.
You knocked off your camera, Jill.
I know I can't work this.
Okay.
Oh,
Hey, Randall.
Thank you. Yes, Brendan.
Sorry, just for my clarity, are y'all looking at asking for $2 this year with the commitment that it's $2 every year after that until whatever we identify as a livable wage?
Yes, sir. That's as I understand it.
Do we have an idea of what we want to consider a livable wage? Like, what's the stopping point, I guess, is my question. Or we'll just deal with that down the road.
I think that's something we can deal with down the road.
that's what I was asking too, because that was my question as well.
It seems like, I think Ms. Kathy's saying that for Greater New Orleans, it's $15 at present. If I read that right. Well, we have our amount for this year, and I think we can establish that down the road.
Yeah, it's me again. For me, getting $7.50 is not what I'm not looking for.
I understand.
It's cheapy. So that's why I'm saying 3.
I
I'm trying
understand.
to go up a little.
I understand.
That's why I said that.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Later on down the line, I know you guys said we're going to do the, what is a livable amount, but are we going to make sure that the increase is going to actually go to the direct care workers in our verbiage and how we spell out how the funds should be used in regards to the wage increase?
Well, that's certainly something we would intend to do, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I think that concludes our business. As far as I'm aware, Courtney, Brenton, do we have anything else that we need before we move on?
I do have one quick question.
Yes. Okay.
For all the people that's new to the council, because I know that they have people that are new to the council, and we were told that we have to tell someone, well, not someone, you,
That would be
what
me.
committee we want to actually serve on. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure I didn't miss it.
You could do it now, or you can let me know through the office.
Okay, I could do it now. I definitely want to serve on the education
And employment.
and employment and the I'm sorry, I had my notes, but I have like 3 days of notes, y'all.
The 378 subcommittee?
Yes, that one. No. I'm sorry. It is the Self-Determination and Inclusion Committee.
You have to pick one.
Oh, you have to,
It's
just
either
one. Well, I'm going to
education,
stick with
employment, or-
education.
Okay. So
Okay.
congratulations. You will be a new member of the Education and Employment Committee.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of you, Randall?
Yes.
All right, to be on the committee.
Yes.
Could you ever be on 2 committees, or do you have to just stick on
For the 2 standing committees of self-determination or education, you have to pick one.
Because I wasn't sure, because I was going to, do 2 committees. I didn't know. I wanted to ask you
Right.
about it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
One
Are
more
there any
question,
other
Randall.
questions with
Can I
regard
serve
to the
upon
business?
the 3-something, the Act 378?
Yes.
Would I be able to be on that too with the
Yes,
education?
that's separate. That's everyone on the council can be on that if they choose.
Okay, all right. That was my question, because you said we only could pick one, so I didn't know if that was a.
Well,
one.
that's true of the standing committees that we have that do the work, and that's the 2 policy committees, which are self-determination and education and employment.
Okay.
But the 378 subcommittee, everyone on the council can be part of that should they choose it. We just have to know who wants to be a voting member, so we can keep counts for quorums and that sort of thing.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Tamisha has her hand raised, Randall.
Yes, Ms. Sonia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be, I can't say it's not off topic. It is dealing with committees. I remember in the past, I'm not sure if it was at one of the separate committee meetings or maybe one of our council meetings. It was brought to the committee that, to the council, that we would have a diversity committee. And I might be saying the name wrong, but I just was wondering about the status.
We're in the process of doing that. All the hurricanes and such have made that where we haven't made progress on it like I wanted, but that is something we're looking into.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We will be forming that. I'm just not exactly sure when at this time, but that is on my radar.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any questions related to the business of the legislative agenda or anything we did today from the council? Is there anything we need? I'm going to ask the staff. Is there anything we need to do before we wrap up? Is there anything y'all need from us before we move to public comments?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Just wanted to make certain before we move on. So now we have the floor open for public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to make a public comment at this time?
There are two comments in the chat, Randall. No one has raised their hands. Jen Katzman says she needed to correct the statement that she made earlier in a question regarding telehealth. After COVID public health emergency ends, the federal agency in charge of the telehealth flexibilities on method of delivery is Office of Civil Rights, not OCS. Okay. And then Ms. Kathy Dwyer says, thank you to Randall for chairing and all council members.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy, for your participation today. Do you have any other public comments? No other public comments? Okay. Do we have any announcements to make? Are there any announcements we need to make before we move to adjourn today?
This is Courtney again.
Yes, Courtney, you have the floor.
Just a reminder that during the January meetings, everyone needs to come prepared to have initiatives and activities to propose for the FY 2022 action plan, which will be the first plan of the 2022 through 2026 5-year plan. So the 5-year plan that was just adopted today will be put out for 45-day public review, and everyone will be able to submit comments to that. And those can be addressed before it is ratified in January. And then the action plan committee will be able to develop the activities based off of recommendations that you guys present during the January meetings.
Thank you for that, Courtney. Okay, so everyone make note of that. We'll need our suggestions for January. Okay, are there any other announcements we need to make before we adjourn? Hearing none, unless we have an objection, I want to announce that our next council business meeting will be January the 19th through the 21st of 2021. So we will see everyone then. And I want to thank everybody for your participation today. And I want to give a big thank you to the staff. I know this is a very challenging day. It's a very hard thing to control this many participants. And so I want to thank you all for your work. And thank you all very much for attending today. Thank you to the public for your input. We couldn't do what we do without you. So thank you all very much. And hearing no objections, the meeting is hereby adjourned.
Excuse me, Randall.
Yes, Rosalind.
For the meeting in January, and do we have a time set for that? Do you know?
The schedule will be put out probably, I'm not sure exactly when, but we'll know in plenty of time, and we'll make sure you get that.
All right, because I don't want to miss anything at all.
We'll make sure that you don't. We'll make sure you get the full schedule, and I'll also make sure that your sheets that we give you in your packet are color coded. So they'll be
All
easy.
right, please.
Keep
I
track.
need it
Yeah,
color code.
I understand. We'll make certain of that, okay?
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, have a good evening. Thank you all.
You too, Randall.